What's up, you guys? Welcome to The Imagination. I'm your host, Emma, and today I'm honored to have back on the show Satanic ritual abuse, child sex trafficking, medical experimentation, and MK Ultra survivor, Beaumont child murder whistleblower, podcaster, content creator, entrepreneur, and founder of Sixth Science, leyline lover, psychic workshop developer and trainer, and absolute inspiration, Rachel Vaughn. In case you missed Rachel's first episode on the show, where she shared a glimpse into her harrowing and inspirational testimony, here's a brief synopsis of what we talked about. Rachel was born in Adelaide, Southern Australia, into a multi-generational, incest-based Illuminati bloodline family that hails from the Kennedy family. Daughter to a mind-controlled mother and a psychopathic father, Rachel's abuse began as a toddler at the hands of her father and continued as she was passed off to other members of the satanic cult he was a part of. Her and her three siblings suffered horrendous abuses at the hands of the same people who should have been protecting them and had nowhere to turn as they watched police and authorities not only partake in their abuse, but work overtime to ensure any abuse allegations would never see the light of day. Rachel and her siblings not only tried whistleblowing their own abuse, but are still to this day blowing the whistle on their father's involvement in the Beaumont child murder mystery case, which still to this day is one of Australia's most infamous unsolved murder mysteries. Rachel was able to escape the cult at 16 and ever since has been in the fight of her life to expose the crimes committed at the hands of her father and others, some of whom still walk free today. Rachel began speaking out to authorities in 2006, and after every avenue had been exhausted in getting her allegations investigated, Rachel took matters into her own hands and began speaking out publicly on podcasts and interviews in 2018. Rachel has now spoken on dozens and dozens of interviews and continues to bring awareness to her father's crimes and to shine a light on the horror she experienced that she knows are still happening to innocent children to this day. Today, Rachel is back to do a deep dive presentation into the Beaumont child murder mystery case, where on January 26, 1966, a sunlit Australian day turned dark when siblings Jane, Arna, and Grant Beaumont vanished from a beach nearby Adelaide, Southern Australia. Despite one of the largest searches in Australian history, no trace of the children was ever found. This case, steeped in speculation of abduction and murder, gripped the nation, shattering a sense of innocence and altering parental trust in public safety. The Beaumont children's disappearance endures as Australia's most haunting unsolved mystery, a poignant echo of lost childhood and a relentless quest for truth. Rachel today steps into this void as a fearless torchbearer, armed with the truth she's fought tirelessly to unearth. For years and years, she has devoted herself to giving a voice to these children, insisting they were never truly missing. Their fate was buried underneath layers of corruption by authorities and media, intent on silencing this story. Today, she peels back the veil, exposing the reasons behind this cover-up and shining a bright light on what befell Jane, Arna, and Grant that fateful day. Rachel's relentless pursuit of justice, undeterred by ignored pleas and suppressed evidence, marks her as a true hero, a warrior for the voiceless. In this gripping episode, the truth emerges, raw and unfiltered, as Rachel leads us toward a reckoning. Her unwavering resolve brings us to the brink of discovery, where the children's resting place might finally soon be revealed publicly, offering peace to their souls and long overdue closure to her and their family. With Rachel at their helm, we're not just revisiting a mystery, we're reclaiming a story, igniting hope, and honoring the unbreakable spirit of those who refuse to let the past stay buried. Before wrapping up the introduction of today's guest, I'd love to give just a couple quick reminders and updates. If you're interested in being a guest on this show, sharing any information privately with me, or submitting a written testimony for my upcoming book series or to be featured on a Substack article, you can reach out to me via email at imagineabetterworld2020@gmail.com or standbysurvivors@protonmail.com. Additionally, I've teamed up with a couple of my favorite brands to offer you guys exclusive discount codes on products I love, such as Rife Technology frequency machines and CZTL's premium methylene blue. You can find all the relevant links and codes, along with other resources, in the show notes below. Your support across all platforms is greatly appreciated, especially as I've had to shift to alternative streaming platforms such as Rumble and X following the termination of my former YouTube channel. I've just recently started a new YouTube channel you can subscribe to at the handle at Imagination Podcast Official that I will be slowly rebuilding as well. The transition to multiple platforms is crucial to continue to share vital information with the public and disclosure communities. So thank you all wholeheartedly for helping to make the imagination the safest space on the internet for survivor, whistleblower, advocate, and educator disclosures. Your support means the absolute world to me and to every guest on my show. So you guys, without further ado, please help me in welcoming today's guest of honor, survivor, whistleblower, overcomer and thriver, educator and teacher, content creator, walking miracle, courageous warrior, my dear friend, and a literal voice for the voiceless, the one, the only, Rachel Vaughn. Rachel, thank you so much for being with us today. It's so wonderful to have you back.
Oh, it's so good to be back, Emma. Honestly, your intros are so spectacular. It's like a therapy session. You just and your research is really good. Like every time you do an intro, you redo it every time and you really look into what's been happening. I don't know how you manage because you've got so many guests. So thank you so much for always being a really good voice for us as well. Because those introductions help people to understand where we're coming from because it can be really difficult when you've got DID and you've got alter parts and you're trying to present yourself in the best possible light. To have an introduction like that just helps. It just encapsulates everything. So if you stumble over your words or you speak too quickly or it doesn't matter because you've already got, your audience already knows that this person, you have respect for that person. It's a beautiful thing. Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're so welcome and you're so worthy of it. It's incredible the lives that you guys have lived, and the whole world should be honoring you, and you should have always been told such wonderful things about yourself. So it's really a miracle that you're here today and that we get to celebrate you and tell you all the amazing things that you are, and that we get to learn from you because you and others have so much crucial information. There's so many unsolved mysteries aside from what we're going to talk about today on things that the world doesn't know, and you and others are the keys to us being able to figure that out and to actually understand the world that we live in, and so it's become such a passion of mine to learn from you and from others. And I feel the least that we can all do who didn't experience it is listen and learn and dive into what it is that you're researching and talking about, because it all holds a key to the greater picture. And ultimately, at the end of the day, all of our goal is to prevent this and stop this from happening to future generations, using the experience that you have had and the understandings and the knowledge that you have. We can all stop this if we come together and share all of this knowledge. And I'm so proud of you and others for coming forward and having the courage to be on the forefront of this and, give all these children a voice, past and present, and hopefully future. And work
Yeah.
that you have done and others and what we're going to be talking about today, it offers these little glimpses of hope, seeing the veil finally break on this case that you've been working so relentlessly on for so many years, and all the work that you're doing on the side, which I actually want to talk about here in the beginning. We're going to be talking about sort of a dark case today, but you in your adult life, one thing I didn't talk too much about in the intro was that you do this incredible work now helping to restore ley lines with love, and you're using the abilities that were exploited that you had, these beautiful spiritual gifts. You're now using them to help others, and you're doing so much wonderful work. And I know that you have some workshops coming up that I wanted to help promote to my guests. Many of my guests have taken the links and the show notes that we provide for them to join these workshops, and they've joined. I've heard such wonderful feedback about them. So I want to give you a little bit of space to talk about some of the work that you're doing now and some of the things that you have coming up. That way, some of my listeners hopefully can go, if they have the time, can go join and learn from you.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you. Well, my passion is not talking about my childhood. I'm waiting for all of this to be, and I think we're pretty close to having the whole case regarding my father's crimes cleared up so that I can move on and have my life back. My passion is helping people to rediscover their psychic abilities, and we all have these innate abilities. We have the cult of materialism in the scientific world absolutely despises anybody speaking about ESP or psychic abilities or anything really that's outside the materialistic paradigm. And there's a reason for that. And a lot of people talk about, it's really unfair, and a lot of people who work outside of that, even in a scientific manner with replicable studies, they get attacked and they don't seem to really understand, or they don't want to say what the reality is around that, why materialism is so enforced, is because a lot of the people who are enforcing it are part of these secret societies. They're Freemasons, they're Illuminati, they're all these different secret society members, and they don't want any of us to know any of those things. It's supposed to all be, you're crazy. Psychiatry was developed to produce this. Anything against materialistic view is crazy. So my passion, and that's why I have my business, and it's called Sixth Science. It's a pun on sixth sense. And well done in your ability to pronounce that as well, because it's a bit of a mouthful. Um, there needs to be a science around consciousness. So my passion is teaching people psychic development. And my greatest passion is actually helping to heal the earth and to recognize that we exist here with so many other discarnate energies and consciousnesses. So we need a science around consciousness, and we also need to recognize that the trees and the plants and the animals, of course, are all sentient around us. The fungus is sentient. There's a fungus called mycelium that lives underground and actually connects the root systems of all plants in endemic areas that are symbiotic. And that is their telecommunication system. So they communicate. And it's so profound, and it's so sad because we've lost this knowledge, but we need to remember. So part of what I teach is how to see ley lines. They are visible. We have cryptochromes in the retina that allow us to see magnetic frequencies, just like birds and insects who we've known circumnavigate the globe using them. This is our I'm a co-founder of a movement called Lay Love Down as well. So even if you don't want to learn a psychic development, go through a psychic development course, you can join Lay Love Down. It's completely free. And you can learn how to see the ley lines. We have knowledge transfer sessions where people come and give their amazing wisdom every second Thursday of every month. And you basically just can learn how to get out into the ley lines and make a difference by expressing joy, vocalizing, using beautiful sound frequencies, all of these different methods, dancing. By expressing joy in those spaces, what you're doing is you're undoing the negative frequencies that the dark pump into them with their horrible rituals and all the horrible other things that your guests and myself have experienced over the years. The reason they do all of that, the reason why they have, all of their churches and Masonic temples and things in those alignments is to influence that energy, because it is so important and they know how important it is. So if you look into ley lines, there's so much that tries to denigrate that they even exist. And it's a scientific fact, and it's a magnetic frequency. The earth is surrounded by these magnetic frequencies, and they run in channels across the earth. So yeah, other things that I teach in my course are how to read an aura, because I think that's actually going to be really significant in years to come. I think, we're going to be electing people into positions of power based upon their frequency, not upon what they say, not upon how clever they are and how they hide their narcissism or their psychopathy, because you can see it. If you learn to read an aura, and that's not difficult either, and similar techniques are used to see ley lines as are used for seeing auras. We are coming into a paradigm very soon where the truth is going to be impossible to hide. I've just been listening to these amazing tapes. The telepathy tapes are absolutely mind blowing. And I've got to series 1, episode 7, where they're talking about, there are supposedly autistic children now who have so many psi abilities. It's ridiculous. That's where we're going. The children that are being born now are so amazing. They are truly amazing. So what we need are adults to help usher them in, who know how to use their abilities, who don't, make those children feel crazy. And with the telepathy tapes, particularly, they're talking about non-verbal autistic children. And these children are so telepathic that they meet on the hill, thousands of them at a time, and communicate from their homes. So they just go off into their own world, and they're all experiencing these things. The replicable studies that they've done are just astounding. So that is the sort of evidence that we have now that things like telepathy exist. Telekinesis is a thing. It's not difficult. If you look up PSI wheel on the internet, on YouTube, you'll see so many videos of people moving things with their mind. That's where humanity is going. We don't need an AI chip to do any of this. We don't need any augmentation. We are perfect and amazing as we are. So obviously I'm very passionate about this. This is what I want to do. I don't want to keep having to, talk about these horrible, horrible experiences I had in childhood. One of the main reasons that I keep doing it is because I know when a person is murdered, their soul never fully moves on properly. So as a medium and in my work, I know this, and I know that these souls of these children are waiting for this to be sorted out. And obviously those of us that are still alive, that, the dark think are, living sacrifices, and I'm thriving, I'm no living sacrifice. They, we need it too. We need it too, so that we can move on and do something different. And I think now is the time for it to happen. I've had some incredible things happen just recently. I was paid a victim of crime compensation payment last year because a major crime department detective told my brother, Andrew McIntyre, that they know that the remains of the three Beaumont children, Jane, Anna, and Grant, are in the ground at my father's Stansbury property. They know in the major crime department, but they can't do anything about it. They can't dig them up because of the suppression order on an inquiry called the Mulligan Inquiry. And what's amazing about the Mulligan Inquiry is thousands upon thousands of people made just incredible disclosures to that inquiry. And then it got covered up with a 90-year suppression order. And I think 13 perpetrators were looked into of the hundreds that were described, and 2 got convicted out of that entire, I mean, the inquiry was huge. And what's really interesting about the Mulligan inquiry is there's a term in golf to have a mulligan. And when you have a mulligan, you wipe the slate clean so you can start again. You don't count any of the false shots that you've made. You just start again, wipe it clean. That's exactly what was done. And we know with the dark, the Satanists always they love to use names and words and spell casting. So, I mean, he might have been a nice guy, but Ted Mulligan, but it's just uncanny that they would do that. But yeah, I've got a presentation, like you said, what you very kindly offered for me to present it. I did present it with Dale Holmes. We'll do it again today. I think that's a really good idea because your audience probably haven't seen what I've done with Dale. And it's just insurmountable. I mean, the amount of evidence to implicate my father in this case and other cases is just astonishing. But they won't do anything about it because of that suppression order, because it's protecting people.
Which really, it's scary to think that something like that, something so damning, can be covered up for so long that all these powerful people are still working overtime to try to make sure that this story never sees the light of day. It's scary. And then you try to think, like, how many other stories are there out there that the public has no idea exists, but there's a couple key people that do because they have that knowledge, or they experienced or saw something, and it's just being silenced. All these stories, all these children who never have a voice. And that's what I really admire about what you're doing is, aside from the work that you're doing, the fact that you've never given up on this case. These 3 children, their stories they're just classified as missing children. There's like that lack of closure that people have as to what actually happened, and it brings so much justice and like freedom to their souls and to this story to be able to illustrate what actually happened, instead of what the media and these authorities have been trying to preach to the public, that we have no idea, it's just a mystery, who knows, they could still be alive, they could be dead, we don't know. And it's really sad. And so any child that was one of these living sacrifices, that ended up not being here with us today, it's like, if we can just shine a light on their story and give them a little bit of justice, I just think what peace that must bring to their soul, that at least their story was heard, the truth of it, and not what was covered up. So what you're doing is just so heroic and noble. And I'm rooting for you, and I love that there's some light peeking through finally after all these years. And so I want to give you some space to share your presentation. But before we do, I know that you have a couple workshops coming up. Did you want to give a couple dates for people, just so that way if they're listening, they can sort of kind of just know and go sign up on your website?
So my April course starts on the 5th of April, and that is for the time frame for Americans. So if you're in the US and you want to do a psychic development course and learn how to see ley lines, how to read auras, how to manifest ethically, and many other things. I also give a telekinesis demonstration. Then sign up as quick as possible, because obviously we're going to start on the 5th. And I do also have another course starting, probably better for the European audience, although I do have some in the US and Canada that will they sign up to be in the middle of the night doing my course. So amazing people. That's dedication for you. That one happens in June. So I usually start doing the intake about a month beforehand. So I'll be starting to do the intake in May. But if people are interested in doing the June course, they can apply at any point.
Wonderful. And that is at www.sixth, and that's the number six, science.com. And I'll have that in the show notes for you guys. And I really encourage you guys to go support Rachel's work. It's really revolutionary what she's doing, and it's so helpful for people who do have these gifts or want to develop them and don't know where to turn, because there are a lot of people who are, inverting a lot of this information or suppressing it in some way or manipulating it. And, even people who are out there actively learning about it might not be learning the truth about it, sadly. And so it's good to have really credible sources where you guys can learn. And this is awesome. She does offer all different times. So no matter where you're at in the world too, she probably has a time and a date that can work for your specific time zone. And thank you, Rachel, for, I know that that's got to be uh, difficult for you too sometimes to have these workshops be all across the board for your time
Yeah.
too. So thank you for providing so many options for people.
Yeah, it's worth it. That cult of materialism that I was talking about before, one of the other reasons why they want to make sure that people in the mainstream think that psi abilities are absolute rubbish is because if people talk about satanic ritual abuse, well, they can say, well, that doesn't exist either. What a load of rubbish. And it's that's purely why I think that they do it. It's not necessarily that they're just, not very bright and they don't understand that there's all these different layers to consciousness. It's because they want to make sure they can hide all of the things that they're doing.
Exactly. Yes. And it's no coincidence that, 95% of the people who have been on my podcast were used for these gifts. Like, it's evident that they exist. It's not just one person coming out and saying, "Oh, I was used for this," or "This was a focus of my development growing up." There's thousands of people now that have the same exact testimony as far as having those gifts, and then having those gifts be used for very dark purposes as children. So obviously that is a big reason why a lot of these programs and experiments have been running, because they know this information. They don't want us to know it. And so they can use it and they can manipulate it and invert it and use it for really bad things to bring the Earth's frequency down and to bring humanity's frequency down. The last thing that they want is for society and humanity to come back and reclaim those, and especially survivors who have developed those, and to teach so we can bring that frequency back up and heal the world and heal each other, and use them for their intended purposes, which are good and positive and beautiful. So it is really important that we recognize this. And it's huge that a podcast like Telepathy Tapes is out there now, mainstream, and been talked about on Joe Rogan and these really big podcasts. And it's a
Yeah.
really exciting time. And again, it's another point in time where your work can shine, and where people are going to start looking for this and saying, "Oh, well, I think I have that," or "I want to develop it," or even survivors who were used for it and maybe want to learn how they can take those gifts and turn them into good and like have a purpose with them. It's really important what you're doing. And so thank
And
you.
one
And again,
last thing to do.
yeah.
Thank you. One last thing. It is a God-given thing. We
Yes.
have the abilities because God gave us them. Jesus Christ was the embodiment of so many of these abilities. And I just want to make that clear because I know there's a strong Christian element to your audience. And I'm not trying to, co-opt people into doing something evil because I don't see anything evil in it. It's what God gave us. We're supposed to have these abilities, and when we use them the right way, darkness and evil cannot exist here. It can't thrive the way that it has in this secret sort of way that it's been doing it. It has to be out in the open.
100%. And now we have people like you helping champion the way to how we can do that and how we can present these gifts and embody them and reclaim them in such a powerful and beautiful way. So I'm really excited that you're doing all of this. And again, I encourage you guys on the other side of the screen to go sign up, and I will have her links in the show notes. And so I want to turn it over to you. You do have a presentation, and thank you so much for putting all this together. It's great to have visuals, especially with, a case that has, been going for so many years. It's really neat to see sort of the evolution of that in pictures and media, and with the evidence that you've provided. So I'll turn it over to you, and let's share with the world and with my audience about this case that a lot of people might not know about.
Okay, all right, let's start. All right, so I will share screen. So starting with a photograph of my father. So my father, Alan Maxwell McIntyre, is pivotal to what I'll be talking about today and giving this presentation on. This photograph's one of the few that we have of him where his dark alter, his evil Max alter, his name was always Max. A lot of pedophiles always use their middle name as their name that they put out to people. So they'll often have, that there's one that I used to know as uh, Wayne, but his first full name is James. They often will use that middle name. Um, so this is a photograph where my father's showing that evil altar. And again, it's I don't want to sort of focus on that for too long, but if you can see evil, that's it. Recently, so as you described in your introduction, my father has been a person of interest in the disappearance of these three little children since 2006, since my dear sister started to speak about publicly what she was shown when she was a child. So what people don't sort of recognise with this case, 26th of January 1966 is when these three children went missing. You've got three sixes in that date. It's 59 years since they went missing. Next year, it'll be 60 years. I think that they want to wait until the 60-year mark in the mainstream and then say, we'll never know, let's put it to bed. But in the meantime, they have made, I don't know how many millions, if not billions of dollars on this case, because every single year they drag it out, they put it in all the magazines, and they make money out of it. And it's just disgusting. There's all these, people who write books on it, and it's just vile. So, so this is what came up this year. It's 59 years since they went missing, and this politician, Frank Pangello, decided that they were going to do this dig. He was partnered with an author, an ex-police officer, and some other individuals. And they were digging the same site that they have dug already twice. So this is the third dig that they did and it started being advertised on the 9th of February this year. They're going for this search at this particular site a third time. They never found anything before. They're doing it again. So they've done it again and it was complete and utter waste of time. Mountains of earth were moved. Big furor in the media, big amount of money made for these people again. They didn't find anything. What was beautiful in this situation was every time that there was a media thing that came out about this, people who had heard about my father's involvement in this case and the fact that my brother and sister believe that the children are in the sinkhole at my father's former property at McIntyre Place in Stansbury, they were flooding the social media pages of these news sites, flooding them, saying, look at Stansbury, look at Stansbury, look at Stansbury. Why haven't you done this? They keep talking about no stone unturned. Well, there's not many stones, and then you'll find the children. Now, one of the reasons why that major crime detective told my brother Andrew last year that they cannot dig there at Stansbury for the Beaumont children is because of the Mulligan inquiry. Now, the Mulligan inquiry terms of reference, nothing to do with the Beaumont children. The Beaumont children had parents. The Mulligan inquiry related to children in state care who had either disappeared or died in very strange circumstances, and hundreds of children went missing, hundreds, and they're the ones that are documented. That doesn't even go into the babies that were born into these children in care, because children can start having children at around about 10 or 11 years of age, especially if they've been abused early. So a lot of those babies just disappeared, and there's more to that, but I can't really speak about it at the moment. But this to me was this attempt to just make it look like, oh, we'll never find them now. We searched at the Castlereagh factory 3 times based on this very, very flimsy information around this guy called Harry Phipps. Again, they just started, going on with us. They said that the Beaumont family were calling for this investigation. There's been nothing more about the Beaumont family asking for this to happen. I think this was just something that they stuck in the paper to make it try and validate what they were doing. This is the dig that they did in 2018. There's the date there where they also didn't find children at the site. So they did a big dig in 2018, didn't find the Beaumont children. They did another one in February this year. So again, this is the Sunday Mail. They're talking about it. Some people that when I shared this said, there's some interesting, things like with this. When I look at the local mainstream news, the paper, the main paper that we have here, there's a lot of what we would describe as comms. So some of the comms on this paper where there was a mention of the word well because the sinkhole's often described as a well at Stansbury. Hospitals doing the wrong thing. Well, I was using experimentation. A lot of the children in the Mulligan inquiry, the allegations are that they were used in medical experimentation. Spy, my father was a spy. Maybe the pedophiles involved in this should run away now, escape an imposter, because this Phipps case, the Phipps theory is an imposter. It's absolutely ridiculous. There's very, very little involved in it. It's just a diversion. So I just thought that was interesting. And as we go along, you'll see that they do this a lot in the local paper. So this is what they're talking about with this Phipps connection. It's loosely based around Phipps' son making an allegation that he saw 3 children in Phipps' backyard around the time of them going missing. And he thought they looked like the Beaumont children. I mean, that is pretty flimsy. There's not much more around that. Yes, Phipps was apparently allegedly a pedophile, but it's pretty flimsy. What's really interesting is below the case, this particular article, is Nicole Kidman. Now, Nicole Kidman's father is well known for being an abuser of one of our most well-known survivors here, Fiona Barnett. So for them to put that article below this was telling. And the man, it suits you, Nicole. And there's a lot of allegations about Nicole's gender as well, which I just thought was very interesting. There you can see it a little bit close up. People can pause and read it if they want to. I, out of frustration, on the 13th of February, posted on behalf of my brother. So, and I'll just read it very quickly. So I posted it on behalf of my brother, Andrew McIntyre, who's recognised victim of childhood sex crimes, having had his abuser, Anthony Munro, who's also a person of interest in the disappearance of the Beaumont children, convicted for 4.5 years in 2016. Andrew is also a witness to the events on the day the deceased Beaumont children were brought to our Edwardstown home in the boot of a car, which was admitted by our father on video in 2015. Now, that was released as an article in 2015, and it was released, the footage itself was released in 2017, within a week of my father's death, or very shortly after my father's death. So for those who've read Debbie Marshall's book Banquet, on page 265, she admits that my father, Alan Maxwell McIntyre, worked in the television industry at Channel 9 studios. Now, that is really important because I've been alleging for years that I was taken by my father to Channel 9 studios as a small child where I was raped and filmed. And my father was involved with a lot of child rape material. On the same page, Debbie mentions that my brother Andrew's abuser, Anthony Munro, filmed himself raping at least one of his victims. So this is the MO of these people in Adelaide. They will abuse and then take footage, and then they sell the footage. Whilst Debbie states that Andrew's Beaumont allegations were unsubstantiated, this is only because the South Australian Police have been covering for this crime for decades and refused to investigate. In fact, Andrew's allegations were substantiated by reams of evidence, which I've published in vlogs, and I'll be sharing most of that today, as well as the fact that Munro agreed to every single allegation that made against him by Andrew, which was 15 pages long, because he wanted to avoid cross-examination in court. And this is unheard of in a child sex case, especially in South Australia. And it led to Munro's second child rape conviction. He's actually serving time for his 3rd child rape conviction at the moment. Andrew had gone on record to let Munro know he was going to ask him about what happened to the Beaumont children in court. And that's why he didn't sort of want to be faced in court. So Andrew's allegations were also substantiated by a diary that placed Munro, our father, and other persons of interest on the Glenelg beach in the days and weeks leading up to the Beaumont abduction from that beach, including the James Wayne that I mentioned earlier, who was my childhood rapist. And he's not yet known for the other crimes that he perpetrated, but that I've told police and the Australian Federal Police. And lastly, Andrew's allegations were vindicated in 2024 by a major crime detective, as I said before, who told him his allegations are 100% correct and accurate. And that was the same one that said that they can't dig at Stansbury for the Beaumont children because of the Mulligan inquiry. I just want to quote Andrew here. Andrew states, SAPOL promotes false news. From day one of this case, they covered up the truth. Police were directing traffic away from our street, while Max and my older sister Claire cleaned up the dead children who were in the boot of a car. They were later taken to Stansbury to be buried with 3 wards of state who were also murdered. And again, that's why they cannot dig at Stansbury, because there are other state wards there. That's what actually covers, that's why the Mulligan inquiry covers that site. There are three state wards in the sinkhole with the Beaumont children. And I was forced to go through a small tunnel where the water from the gully had etched out a tunnel to the sea as a child, as a 5-year-old. And my father showed me this stack of, it was like a fence of small skulls. And I couldn't count to 50 at that time, but I estimate there are about 50 in that sinkhole, which is like a cave. So there's sinkholes and caves all along that the foreshore there at Stansbury. I continue to quote Andrew. Tony Munro drove me over to Stansbury 2 days before the end of school holidays to show me where the children had been buried by Max, Tony Munro, my grandfather and his friend. A large number of people were involved in this crime, which was overseen with full knowledge by SAPOL. All that happened was confirmed to me by an honest detective whose name I will not reveal at this stage because of what happened to ex-head of the Major Crime Department, Doug Barr, who was hung in his closet, which is a fact. So our ex-head of the Major Crime Department in, I think it was 2019, was found hung in his closet. There was a lot that went around that. I had dealings with Barr, so did Andrew, not a nice guy. But police were swarming his house at the time. And so whatever Barr was speaking about out of context, because when you're hung, it's quite often because you've sworn an oath to a particular brotherhood and you've gone against that oath. So again, just me getting frustrated. So this is the Tammy Mills article describing that diary, which is absolutely pivotal evidence in this case. This is my first cousin, Martin Hamilton Smith, shaking the hand of our ex-Prime Minister, John Howard, during the time that John Howard was Prime Minister. This is publicly known that this photograph is out there. This was in my cousin Martin's book, The 7 Leaders of Camelot, I think is the name of the book. So people in my family get elevated if they do the right thing. If you look at the handshake and you know about the sorts of things that you and I obviously know about, you'll know that there is a hierarchy described by this handshake that is quite telling. At the time, Martin was a South Australian politician, leader of the Liberal Party at that time, I believe. So, you know, John Howard was the Prime Minister, so it's just a very interesting photograph. So, with this case wrapping up, or this third dig at the Castello factory wrapping up, on the 25th of February, I thought, look, I've got to get ahead of this because they're going to start talking about it being Von Einem again, because this is what they do. They go from Harry Phipps to Bevan Spencer Von Einem, who is the only person who has ever been convicted for the family murders, which I will describe in a little while. It's horrific, and my father was very much involved with that as well. They just cycle, and then they go off to Derek Percy. I mean, it's ridiculous. There's no concrete evidence like there is in this case with my father to point at any of these people. The only reason why they think that Bevan Spencer Von Einem might have been involved with the disappearance of the Beaumont children is because of this photograph, and I'll explain a little better. Just in relation to the family murders, I mentioned earlier a page in Debbie Marshall's book, The Untold Story of Adelaide's Family Members. She called it Banquet, which is interesting because there's a lot of cannibalism involved, unfortunately. On this page, it just describes that Adelaide is known as the City of Corpses. It's also known as the murder capital of the world. Technically, apparently, it's not the murder capital, but that's what it's known for. So Adelaide's got a very small population, 1.8 million. So that's a pretty interesting moniker to have. And this is the page that I was describing. So in it, she says that my father, Alan Maxwell McIntyre, worked in the television industry at Channel 9. So I knew he worked, you know, creating child rape material, but I didn't know he officially was said to work at Channel 9. She's obviously an investigative journalist. She knows this. And this is where it says that Anthony Munro was filming children that he was abusing at least one occasion. And again, this is just a little bit of background information on what the family murders were. So they were the young men and boys that went missing in the 1970s and 1980s, a whole series of them. Their bodies were left out to be found. They had horrific injuries. Many of those bodies were found to have horrific injuries to the back passage, which are pretty much identical to what I was compensated for. Sorry, my interesting, my little speaker just turned itself off. So I was compensated for a series of abuses that occurred to me in my childhood. I was compensated in the middle of 2024. That case, my victim of crime ex gratia case, because I wasn't able to get a conviction against my father, that languished for 5 years until I spoke to my lawyer and said, or sent him an email and said, this major crime department, this detective has said to my brother that they know that everything you said is 100% true and correct, and that they can't dig at Stansbury because of the Mulligan inquiry suppression order. Within a very short period of time, I think it was like, I don't know, 10 days or something, or even shorter. I think I might have the dates and stuff shortly to show you. I was offered a victim of crime payment. And one of the factors in that was the fact that I had medical documentation to prove that I have a permanent injury from a knife rape that my father perpetrated on me as a small child, which is the same modus operandi of what happened to these young boys and men. The only difference with me is I survived and they didn't. And my father was known to leave things out to keep trophies. And I know that this is horrific stuff, and I'm sorry that people have to hear this, but they need to know that this was happening. One of the children who was abused and left out to be found, his name is Richard Kelvin. I knew Richard. We used to go and have we knew the Kelvins really well. Richard, I'll go into this a little bit later on, but Richard was a family friend. His father, Rob Kelvin, was a family friend. I've got a photograph of my sister Claire's wedding where Richard's aunt is present. So Richard was working at my paternal aunt Barbara's childcare centre in the weeks leading up to his disappearance. So there's a lot of connections between my father and Richard. And I saw Richard brought in by a chief inspector of police and another man to a hidden cellar below my childhood home in Edwardstown, South Australia. And we were abused together with a little girl that who was also missing at the same time, called her first real name is Tracy, but she's best known in the mainstream media as Louise Bell. Now, these two children, Louise Bell went missing in January of 1983 and Richard went missing in June of 1983 in the same state, not far from one another, and the mainstream media has never connected this disappearance, ever. It makes no sense. Both very high profile cases, and both my father was involved in. So that's just a bit of an understanding of what the family murders are. It's known that there's a whole heap of suspects, so roughly about 26 suspects at least. This one says 12, but I've read 26. But they've convicted one individual, and that's Bevan Spencer Von Einem. So this is, Australia's murder capital. Again, they actually say that it's the murder capital of the world. There's the quote. So I just wanted to prove that what I was saying. So this is me in the foreground. I'm about 14. That's my sister Claire. That's the groom. There are many people of interest in this photograph. And that's Richard Kelvin's aunt Carol. Carol and Claire had a house together. They ran a business together in Port Adelaide. Yeah, so it's important that people see that photograph. There's so much photographic evidence to connect my father with these cases. So again, we've got more talk about the Beaumont case in the local paper. This one is dated, I think this is the 26th of February. Right, so just taking into account that I had got ahead of them saying that Von Einem was the one that had done it because they weren't going to have any luck with this Phipps theory with the Castalloy dig at this point. I got ahead of this a day ahead. So I posted on 25th of February that it's not Von Einem on the beach, or sorry, on the bridge looking during a search for the Beaumont children. And I'll explain that a bit more in a minute. The next day they bring out the Von Einem theory again. I mean, it's just they've got no new playbook. They do the same thing over and over and over again. So this is, I wonder if I can, yeah. So this is the guy that they keep trying to pin it on. First they do Phipps, and then they'll go to Von Einem, and next time they'll probably go to Percy. So it's just over and over and over again the same rubbish, just ignoring what my father was involved in. Now, during this search at the Castalloy factory, this third dig, my brother, despite being extremely traumatized, being so unbelievably frustrated, he's 20 years older than me, so he's had to deal with this for an extra 20 years on me. who was a witness on the day that the children were brought to our property at at Edwardstown. And our father has admitted to this, that this happened, that the children were brought to our house by Anthony Munro in the boot of a car and they were deceased. Andrew was there on the day. So Andrew went along to the Castelloy dig and he started to speak to people. And crowds were milling around, and he spoke to, I think it was Channel 7 and Channel 9, and a few other people. So very, very proud of him for doing that. That's not easy. But this is how insulting the mainstream media is. He's being described as a spectator. He's a witness. And in the paper, they called him a spectator. Anyway, there he is. So there's some talk down here about Munro and Andrew, what Andrew has put forward. Oops. And that's Andrew there. He's been working so hard on this. So, we've all been, myself, Andrew, our sister Ruth, have been at this for 19 years. Andrew, Ruth, and Claire, their mother died in, I think it was 67. So because of what she knew, in very strange circumstances, there needs to be an inquest. Our sister Claire, my half-sister Claire, she's now dead. She died. She was hung. Her neck was broken. Somehow she did that all to herself. Ridiculous. That happened in 2009. Now her daughter has also been murdered. She's also been hung. Women don't do this. So that was on the solstice of last year, the 20th of December, and my niece Poppy lived for 606 months, 18,446 days.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. That is horrific.
They just keep bumping people off. Now, I've been told that Poppy was looking for a specific book to give us that relates to the Beaumont disappearance. So, and now she's dead. So, poor Poppy. Poor Poppy. We were 9 months apart in age. We were very close, so it's pretty horrific. We weren't close for the last 19 years, unfortunately, because of all of this rubbish. And she also owned the Macklin Street home for a time that I grew up in, from about 2007 onwards. And, as I've said, I've proven that there are tunnels, there's a hidden cellar, there's a bunker. I've proven the tunnels in that area. So, that would be another reason for her to be gotten rid of, because she may have known. She may have known. Okay. So to get ahead and just dispel this Von Einem theory that he had anything to do with the disappearance of the 3 Beaumont children, I just want to get ahead of this and just get rid of this ridiculous theory. So this man is called Brian. This man is called John Pike. John Pike is currently serving 18 years for over 100 child sex abuses. These people in the middle, I'm not sure who they are, but this little boy, Philip, that John's got his hands all over, died very young in very disturbing circumstances. This person, Brian, so this photograph was taken by Anthony Munro's camera, and it's from 1960. I think it's 1967 or late 66. So obviously the Beaumont children disappear in 66. So this is what this person looks like at that time. This is him. So if I get close up, then I'll show you a comparison in a minute. This is the guy in this photograph. This is Bevan Spencer Von Einem that they keep trying to say is this guy. Now, number one, Von Einem didn't wear glasses at that time. This person overlooking this search for the Beaumont children has glasses. Also, Von Einem didn't look like this at that time. This is a much younger photograph of Von Einem. So it's completely erroneous. It's utterly and completely erroneous, this theory that he had anything to do with it based on this photograph. This is the comparison. So, it's even though it's an opposite ear, the ears are the same, the nose, the lips, it's identical. It's the same man. This is proof that this guy that they keep saying is Von Einem during the search is not Von Einem, because a guy called Kevin Ling, who's a forensic facial mapping expert, said in 2009, it's not him. So people can read that if they want to stop it and read it. And this is what Von Einem looked like at that time. Nothing like this. So, it doesn't wear glasses. I mean, it's just, it's so ridiculous. It's almost laughable. But they think we're so stupid that we're not going to work this stuff out. So they just keep pumping out the same rubbish over and over and over again. And it's not working anymore because, like I said, there was a groundswell during this last Castelloy dig that absolutely demanded that Stansbury be looked at this time instead of going through the same motions over and over and over again. And there's a comparison again. It is not this man. Like I said, Vaughn didn't even look like this at the time this photograph was taken. He looked like this. It's just insane, and didn't wear glasses. So finally, a breakthrough. On the 27th of February, just as the Castelloy dig was wrapping up, because they hadn't found anything despite moving like thousands of tons of earth. I mean, I don't know how many tons of earth they moved, but because I wasn't present, but Andrew said it was like mountains of earth that they moved. They dug down so deep. So in this article, for the very first time, both Andrew and I are named. Now, where is it? I think I'm in this one. Oh, I might not be in this one. Well, doesn't matter because Max is named and Stansbury is named. It's the next article. So finally, mainstream news. Like I said, this is pretty much the only paper. Stansbury finally gets a mention as somewhere where they should be digging, and they're hopefully going to be digging next. So that happened on the 27th of February. And on the 28th of February, now have I got the one that's marked? No, I haven't. On the 28th of February, this article came out, and this is what's so significant. So I am a person who has done well over 100 interviews talking about being a satanic ritual abuse survivor. Anybody who talks about ritual abuse never gets into the mainstream paper unless they're making fun of you. The fact that I'm a victim of crime and have been paid out by the Crown Solicitor last year means that the papers, if they want to denigrate me, they will have a case on their hands. I can sue them. They have to ask my permission to name me as a victim of crime. Luckily, they didn't say anything nasty about me in this article, so I haven't gone them. But people need to pay attention to the fact that I have been naming my father as the Australia's equivalent to Jeffrey Epstein since 2020. Two references to Epstein are made on this article page. So again, like the comms I keep mentioning, there's so many comms. So someone called Jackie Epstein wrote this article, and we've got Epstein mentioned down the bottom. And this is where I'm finally named, that we've long claimed that our father and convicted pedophile Anthony Munro are connected to the Beaumont case. Now, this is a guy called Andrew Costello. So he's got a TV show where he showcases certain areas in South Australia. He's apparently had an interest in the Beaumont case for a long time. So he came forward and said, I will fund a private dig if I can get permission. Interestingly, my sister Simone, and that's a photograph of the actual dig site. And there's my brother again. So big breakthrough. Suddenly it's gone quiet though, which is very frustrating. So my sister did go, she publicly said on a forum on Facebook, Cozzy, you haven't contacted me yet. I'm giving you permission. So we know we've got permission from Simone, who's the one of the owners of the Stansbury property. Things have gone quiet. So Cozzy was actually on York Peninsula where Stansbury is, sort of traveling around and posting a lot about that. We haven't heard anything more about this case. What was really interesting around this time was, again, the comms in the local paper. So we've got, this is the digital version, and I've just taken a few of the digital articles that were shared, I think it was the 28th of February again. They've shown the site, the well site, which was sort of, my father oversaw a digging through of some of this area many years ago. And he was very, very careful to make sure that the excavator did not go anywhere near the well because he knew what was in there. He then tried, it's quite funny really, he then tried to sue my sister and her partner who had funded the excavation that he'd asked them to do because he said that they'd done it against his will. Well, then my sister produced a photograph, which is of my father overseeing this excavation. Yeah, it's just, the lies, that just the constant lies. So he gave that one up. But at the same time that the sinkhole was finally being looked at in the paper, they also had this case of Gene Hackman supposedly being mummified. My father kept mummified bodies, and horror stories about to blast $1 billion hole in SA's economy, which is really interesting because this horror story will have a big effect on South Australia when it finally is brought out properly in the mainstream and people recognise what's going on. Just to try and put people off daring to look at Stansbury, they then bring this article out saying that the local York Peninsula people want to put the rumours to rest. What in actual fact is the article actually was actually quite positive. Like the local people were like, oh, we really want to know what's going on, and people are really interested in our town now, which is funny. And again, they're using the pun on the well. It's not actually a well. It's often referred to as a well. It's actually a sinkhole that was used like a well. Okay. So this was in the book regarding the Saturn man theory, the Harry Phipps theory. And again, Harry Phipps' property at Castelloy, the Castelloy factory at North Plympton that has been dug 3 times. The theory was around this guy. There was a book written about this. In the book, the photograph that you can get off the internet very easily of Harry Phipps was elongated to make it look more like an identikit drawing of an individual that was seen with the Beaumont children on the day they went missing. Now, when you don't elongate his face, he looks nothing like the identikit drawing. In actual fact, this is my father, looks a lot like the identikit drawing. So this is what my father looked like at the time, and I would say that's pretty much a dead ringer for that identikit. This is Harry Phipps. He looks nothing like it. So every time they try and bring out evidence to refute, or to try and support this theory that it's Phipps or it's Vaughn, we can easily prove that that's not the case. In the same book, there was mention of a towel and some items that went missing. That's the book I mentioned before. That was really important. There's a pair of shoes. It's just really interesting that we have a photograph of our sister that's not like that particular towel, but there are other towels that the Beaumont children had when they went missing. These are all items that the Beaumont children had either on them or with them when they went missing. This is my brother Andrew. This is an interview that he did, and I just took a screen grab, holding up a picture of our sister Claire when she was very young, holding a towel that just appeared in the family collection shortly after the Beaumont children disappeared, and we believe may have belonged to one of the children. And this is Claire wearing those particular sandals. Now, maybe they were just popular sandals at the time, who knows? But the reason I wanted to put this in there is there was always this one sandal in the shed. This is the backyard of the property that I grew up in Edwardstown, where the Beaumont children were brought. I remember, looking at this sandal a lot as a child because it was in really good condition and wishing that we could find the other one. There was only the right sandal, there wasn't the left, or either way. And I was looking at this sandal and had it in my hand one day, and my father came past and sniggered. Now, when he did that, I always paid attention. I've never forgotten it. So that sandal was significant. He kept trophies. He kept special mementos. Claire just happened to have a pair of these sandals also. This pair of bathers, this is my father here. These are his group of friends. That's Andrew when he was younger, always holding up fish. This pair of bathers was seen on somebody with the children, the Beaumont children, on the day they disappeared. This exact pair of bathers. Now, my father would share his bathers, his clothes, his wetsuit gear, everything with his friends. They're all homosexual as well, by the way. Even though he hated homosexuals, it's just so confusing at so many alter states. But they used to share all of their clothing. So my father had access to those bathers that was seen on the man with the children on the day that they went missing. So that's another piece of evidence. Again, the diary. And again, my father made the admission on camera that my sister was telling the truth, that the 3 Beaumont children were brought to our Edwardstown property in the boot of a car on the day they went missing, and that they were brought there by Anthony Munro. Now, I have no doubt that my father was involved with that, with the deaths of the children and the disappearance of the children, but he's always one to try and blame other people for what he's done. At the moment, there's actually more signatures on here than there are in this screen grab. There's over, about 38,000, I think, signatures now on a petition to have the children exhumed from the sinkhole at Stansbury. Now, there was a very minor petition, 2,360, put up years ago and closed in 2015. That was enough of community support to have one of the digs done at the Castleloy factory in 2018. So we're still waiting for the one at Sainsbury, despite the fact that we have this huge groundswell of support that want that dig done. This is the sort of crap that we have to deal with all the time. So this is the author of a Facebook page that very emotively uses a picture of the Beaumont children parents, Nancy and Jim Beaumont, in the grips of their despair as his icon. I mean, how emotive can you get? And he writes books about these dead children, probably makes quite a bit of money. And here he is lying about having dealings with myself and Andrew, and we've never actually conversed with this individual. So apparently he's had brief dealings with us and found our information changed, and brief correspondence was all over the place, mixing stories. Never, ever communicated with this individual, neither has Andrew. So if that's not a cover up, I don't know what is. And this is the sort of person that they use to promote their book. So this is Alan Jones. Now, Alan Jones has been accused of he's a TV personality, used to be a radio jock. He's had multiple child rape allegations against him. Now, just prior to me doing this presentation with Dale Holmes recently, an article came out. I hope I've got it. I might not have it, where he's got more allegations against him, and the child abuse squad is investigating them. So they never tell you in the paper how old these people are that he's been alleged to have abused, but the fact that the article states that it's the child abuse squad investigating him means that he must have been abusing children. This is the sort of person they're using to sell a book about a pedophile that supposedly stole these 3 children. I mean, and again, this is the Unmasking the Killer of the Beaumont Children Facebook page and book. For those who might be interested, there is a review for that book written by someone called Judith Beaumont. And I'm not going to read it out, but it's scathing. It's absolutely scathing. People can pause and read if they want to. During the Castleloy dig in February of this year, some beautiful people held up this placard outside, not on the grounds, they're actually outside the grounds on public property, to bring attention to the Stansbury dig, and they were abused by an individual involved with the Castleloy dig. And this is just the quality of the sort of people that want to absolutely focus on one theory for an agenda and ignore the Stansbury situation. Now, for those who find it difficult to believe that there could be a cult of any kind running Australia or running South Australia, there is a chapter of the Satanic Temple in Australia. You can find it on their website. And there's also a chapter in Adelaide. Now, that used to be on the website, but it's disappeared. I've shared this a lot, so who knows? They've taken it down anyway. Well, they did last time I looked. And this is a Canberra Times article from 1991, which explains that in New South Wales, there are 14 towns known to have child rape and satanic ritual abuse allegations against them. And, some of these towns, I mean, I've had so many people that I know who have been abused in those towns that have contacted me in the years that I've been speaking publicly about my ritual abuse. So, there is a lot. There's a lot. And for context, those who might not know, it's been a basic thing that they've done in South Australia for quite some time, where if you were in an institution in South Australia and you didn't have someone like family to speak for you, like wards of state, like little children who don't have families and parents, and taking into consideration many of the children that were wards of state in South Australia in decades gone by were sent here by the UK without their parents' knowledge and without their consent. They were just taken and sent off. So anybody that didn't have somebody to speak for them was up for being anatomized, which means that they have all their flesh removed and their skeletons could then be taken and sold overseas. So that's something that's been happening since the 1860s by the museological elite, the Adelaide Medical School. They're all in on this. Aboriginal Protection Board. There's a really good article called The Guardian, from The Guardian, called The Room of the Dead. And if people want to look into that, they will find that it wasn't just that they were anatomizing, children or anybody else who didn't have family to speak for them and selling their parts. They were also going out and actually shooting people. So um, there's at least 6 skulls in this Room of the Dead in the Adelaide Museum that have bullet holes in them because they needed Aboriginal remains to sell. So they just go out and kill people and then deflesh them and then sell them. So you can read this, it's horrific. There's some very significant names in there. The medical school in Adelaide was very much a part of this. That's the same medical school that received the Kuru cadavers, 75 Kuru, it was either 70 or 75 Kuru infected cadavers. Kuru is a prion disorder. They were taken from Papua New Guinea, taken to the South Australian Medical School, Adelaide Medical School, and then children like myself were intentionally infected with the Kuru prions to see if children would come down with Kuru. And according to Professor Matthias Yucker, we don't come down with Kuru, and I'm one of the reasons why they know that, because I was infected 3 times and didn't come down with any of the prion disorders. And prion disorders are horrible. They're like Parkinson's, dementia, Alzheimer's. There's a whole list of them. Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, mad cow's disease. They're horrific. My father told me at 10 that I'd been part of this study and that I was going to die of a horrible death. Which is just charming. And he told me other things as well that I won't go into because it's just full on. So yeah, so there's evidence in the museum of this, this human trophies. This is what they are. This is what people talk about, on forums like yours, Emma, where people have been in human hunting parties and they keep trophies. This is exactly that. One of these individuals, I think it was Ramsey Smith, had 101 skulls. I think I've got I've got another screen grab where one of these individuals actually had a private collection of around about 100 human skulls. I mean, you can't have a private collection of human skulls. And I think he was our coroner at the time. So it's just so wrong. During the time that all of this has been coming out through the Room of the Dead articles and other amazing investigations, there have been auction houses in South Australia who've been selling human body parts, again, human skeletal remains. Now, they were under scrutiny again recently, and then they were let off, no problem, because, and the article, I haven't got it here, but this is a recent article on the 3rd of March, it's okay for them to sell these parts apparently because they're just low caste Indians from India. So our low caste, our poor wards of state are probably being sold over there. It's just beggars belief. So people think that human hunting parties don't happen and people don't take trophies. This is the proof. This is the evidence. And another thing, there are vats of formaldehyde with bodies in them, many of them children, in certain hospitals in South Australia that I've been told about. And those children would also be used to defleshed and then, their skeletons used for medical, specimens. Where do they get them from? So I think every single human specimen in every single medical office, every university, every museum human specimen should be DNA tested to see, to compare to these missing children, all these missing adults. How many of them have actually just been taken, defleshed, and sold for, because they're worth a lot of money. A full human skeleton's worth apparently about 250 grand. So they're very expensive. And you've got to wonder, these people that have these specimens in their medical offices, do they ever really think about where they come from? No parent willingly gives their child's skeleton to be used as a specimen. Let's face it, it's just, who would do that? Unless they were like my father. So a little bit of an understanding about why my father gets away with all of this or got away with this throughout his life. This is my father's grandfather, so my great-grandfather on my father's side. So his name was Joseph Wright. He was the secretary of the Sons of Temperance Lodge, a very high-level Mason, considered a master builder. So he was the grand president of the Grand Lodge. And my grandmother, his daughter, she was very high up in politics at a time when women were just not in politics, and she's a businesswoman. She did our genealogy. So this is where it says that he was the Grand President of the Grand Lodge, which is pretty much the highest level in Freemasonry. My grandmother did our family tree, and she went all the way back to a Catherine Kennedy and stopped looking. So obviously that was important for her to get all the way up to Catherine Kennedy, and that was it. She didn't bother to go any further. So for those who are unaware, Kennedy line is one of the 13 Illuminati bloodlines. I think this might explain the interesting handshake mentioned before with my cousin and the ex-prime minister, who was the current prime minister at that time. There is a rank and order with these elites and these satanic circles. My father was protected for a very long time. This is some of the symbolism that they have with this, with the Masonic order. So, you've got your pillars, you've got your black and white tiles on the floor, keys. There's so many different symbols. I thought it's important to share for people to see. And that's the Kennedy connection. Down here is Laurel Wright. That's my grandmother, my father's mother, and she's the daughter of Joseph Wright, who I just showed was the Grand President of the Grand Lodge. She did this genealogy. She got up to Catherine Kennedy, and then she stopped. And that's just a little bit about Laurel. So I just wanted to share that so people might have an understanding of why on earth would my father be so protected. Well, this is why. My brother's been speaking out about this publicly in interviews and things since 2018 properly. We did do an interview in 2007, but we all had our faces pixelated out and our voices changed. I've been speaking out about this since 2018. I've shared evidence on the tunnels and the bunkers and the cellars that I was taken to as a child, trafficked through so that I could be used as a honeypot in my father's blackmail operations. He was an ASIO operative. He worked by day as a telecom technician, but his job was to tap lines. So he listened to people's conversations. But in actual fact, he was an ASIO operative, which was a part of the reason also why he was so protected. He knew the tunnel system because he was a telecom worker. The only people who have access to those tunnel maps now, since the Postmaster General's office had them removed in the 80s, and only telecom officers or Telstra officers have those maps now. The Telstra officers, so my father was a telecom worker. He owned a house with a telecom bunker, a telecommunications bunker beneath it. His father at Stansbury also had a telecommunications bunker beneath the property. He was also a telecommunications officer and survived 2 wars. The man that my father bought this property at Edwardstown from that has this bunker under it, he bought it from a guy called Morris Edwards, who was also a telecom worker. So these telecommunications bunkers are kept within a certain secret system of those who work in those departments. And if anybody wants to access that evidence, I've got a PDF with it all written, and screen grabs and things. And I've also done a vlog, which you can find on BitChute or Rumble. I can't put it on my YouTube channel. This is what the bunker looked like. And I know, because I'm a kiln technician, I know that it wasn't just a kiln that was left as a kiln, because it had concrete up the sides and on the base, just as this one does. And you can't do that in a kiln. Concrete won't stand the firing temperature. So my father told my sister that there was a brick kiln under the property. I was trafficked through it many, many, many times. I even remember how it smelt. And when I was down there was a lot more salt crusted around the bricks. There's a lot of white sort of crusty stuff around the bricks. That's all fact. It's all, I've done the research. I've proven that they all exist. So they can't keep this hidden for too much longer. And I've been told that the shed above that, because somebody else owns that property now, that shed is collapsing, and it will eventually collapse into that space. So, those owners of that property are going to have to face this reality at some point. This is part of my tunnel article. There are, this is where all the tunnels that I've been able to substantiate, and the tunnel openings I've been able to substantiate exist. And that's not even taking into account the Telstra tunnels that are under every main street and every main road are usually about 6 foot deep, 1 to 2 meters across, every main street, every main road. So I haven't even marked those in here because they're so extensive. The map would be a mess. You wouldn't be able to make sense of it. And that's all over Australia. And they're belied by metal plates on the ground. So if you see metal plates, 2 plates usually isn't big enough for a pit for you actually to go into. But if you've got 4 of these metal plates, that's usually a big enough pit for you actually to go into. There's usually a ladder, like I said, 6 foot deep, and those tunnels are extensive. They just keep going and going and going. So after I started speaking to major crime detectives about this tunnel system in 2012, suddenly there was this great interest in doing this upgrade for the South Road area where these tunnels are. So this is just, an indicator that it happened in 2016. They started really talking about it strongly. And this is Stephen Mulligan. So Stephen Mulligan is son to Ted Mulligan, who was the man who officiated over the Mulligan inquiry, which was suppressed. He went into the Transport and Infrastructure ministerial position, which was overseeing this project, which just happens to be destroying the tunnels and all of the heritage listed houses that have access to those tunnels along the South Road area. Now, the reason why the heritage listed houses have access to the tunnels is because in 1938, the South Australian government had a mandate that every house, every business place, and every meeting place had to have a tunnel, trench, or bunker within 20 feet of the back door. And so Adelaide is absolutely riddled with tunnels and trenches and bunkers. Absolutely riddled. And when I contacted someone who'd done a thesis on the tunnels and trenches and bunkers in South Australia, in Adelaide specifically, and I described the one in Edwardstown, he said that that was a type 5 shelter and was common in the area. So I was spot on. So, interesting that he get this particular position after his father's done the Mulligan inquiry. And there's proof here that is Ted Mulligan is his father. And this is the Children and State Commission of Inquiry, the Mulligan Inquiry, and there's Edward Ted Mulligan's name. This is part of the Darlington upgrade that they were talking about. So the reason why South Road is so significant to the tunnels and bunkers is because they expected in 1938, they were expecting that the Japanese would moor the Tokyo Rose, which is a large gunship, and fly their airplanes up South Road and bomb. So that was why we all had to have these tunnels and trenches and bunkers. Particularly, they particularly expected that they would travel along South Road. So all of South Road was just riddled with these bunkers. Now, interestingly, during the upgrade, they unearthed some tunnels that surprisingly weren't on the municipal records, just like the Edwardstown tunnels are not on the municipal records. I had to prove their existence myself with a series of amazing researchers. So just opposite Flinders Medical Centre, there was the embankment that they were trying to sort of build up so they could do this upgrade had just fallen away. And just across from there is what's called the Hamilton Winery, or it was the Hamilton Winery at the one point. And the Hamilton name is important to keep in mind. So this is an article where this water was leaking through. And they described it as a rainwater drain or natural water course. Later on, they explained that it's most likely a drain. There was a series of errors in water course mapping. A lot of these water courses, these tunnels, weren't on maps for a reason. They were kept hidden and secret because a lot of trafficking happened through them. It's really, really significant that Flinders Medical Centre is right across the road from here. Now, I was given access to a Flinders University Bachelor of Science degree when I had no right to get into that science degree straight out of high school because my father made a phone call and made sure that I got in. I didn't have any of the prerequisite studies and I struggled and I knew I was going to fail. And when I told my father and his mate about that, they said, you don't even have to put pen to paper, just turn up to the exams and you will pass. And that's what happens in my family. You get a degree. Now, I was 13% or 13 points too low to get into a Bachelor of Science degree, and I have my transcripts, which I have published, proving that. I had no prerequisite studies, 13 points too low, and I was given this because my father made a phone call. He also attended the university with me, and every time we went to enroll me in a course and they said, no, she can't get in because she hasn't got any prerequisite studies, he'd go up and whisper in their ear. They would make a phone call and very reluctantly sign me up. So there's a lot of academics in my family. Okay, so this goes on about how they didn't really know where this was. In this particular one, the transport minister or whoever he is, Stephen Knowles, says, how the hell, he doesn't know how the hell this happened in the first place. Well, Stephen, if you'd done my studies, if you'd looked in my vlog, you might understand. Okay. So again, they call it the River Torrens to Darlington construction portal. They'd also call it the North-South corridor. These are the same terms used for the same upgrade. These are the plates that I mentioned before that are over the Telstra tunnels. So I've looked into this is on the corner of Castle Street and Towers Terrace, very close to where I grew up. I know that just a little further down from here is a walkable water tunnel also. That was described to me by a resident. It ran between 26 Gurney Street and Castle Street. I've shone a torch in here. It has a ladder. It's about 6 foot deep and it's about 2 to 3 feet across. So very much a walkable tunnel. And they're all over the place. And this is what they look like on the inside. So they are extensive. They just keep running. And of course, they need them to be extensive because they run their wires through. Some of the pits, they call them pits underneath those metal plates, are closed at either end. The lines can still go through, but people can't. But many of them are still open. And some of these pits are huge. Like you could ride a bike in them. I've had people sort of give me anecdotal evidence of the fact that they used to ride through these things on their motorbikes, sorry, on their push bikes, and ride rings around in these spaces because they were so big. This is really important to bring into consideration. So during this upgrade of the South Road that I've been talking about, the residents in the area were absolutely astonished that all of these heritage listed homes that are usually protected, and you're not allowed to do anything to them without getting some sort of permission. You can't change the roof, you can't build on or anything without specific permission from the government. A lot of these heritage listed homes in this area, the ones that were standing during the 1938 mandate for tunnels, trenches and bunkers that they had to have, are being destroyed, compulsorily acquired and destroyed. And the reason for that is they want to hide where these bunkers and tunnels and trenches are. So it's a bit sort of fuzzy. Sorry, I was pretty angry when I took the photograph. But some submissions also questioned why character homes were selected for demolition while non-heritage properties such as the Telstra Exchange at Glandore were kept. Now that Telstra Exchange, from there you would have a lot of tunnel access, but Telstra's allowed to have that tunnel access because they're the ones that have all the maps. And so, their officers know all about this. On that tunnel system, nearby to where I grew up, is the Glandore Boys' Home. 106 boys went missing from that home. There is a tunnel between the Glandore Boys' Home, a butcher and baker, and my father's property at Edwardstown. And you don't even want to know what happened at the butcher and baker. There was a high-ranking church official who was accused of child rape and exonerated, and then shortly afterwards died. And his name rhymes with Bell. He was a cardinal. And just very interestingly, so people know, the people that made allegations against this cardinal have recently been compensated by the Victim of Crime Compensation Board. So he supposedly got off, but they've been compensated, and there's a reason for that. I brought this up because the Glandore Boys' Home on Naldura Avenue needs to be exhumed. They have the hull of a ship called the Hulk under the grounds. It's very obvious. There's a great big cigar-shaped mound in the grounds that makes no sense. And when I went there around 2018, 2019, and asked a woman at the front desk, are there any underground spaces here? Because my father had told me about what was there. And she said, did you mean the ship? And I'm thinking, what are you talking about? I was thinking about a cellar. And she took me into the history room, and there was all this information about this ship that they used to moor 2.5 km off Largs Bay, and had 100 kids, 100 little boys in that ship. No one would be able to hear them screaming. Eventually, when they realised how inhumane that was and the boys were dying, they brought the ship, and it supposedly disappeared, but it's actually in the grounds at the Glandore Boys' Home, the old Glandore Boys' Home. Now, the reason they did that, and it's very important to know this because of this high-ranking official that used to access it, when you have a ship in dry dock, so according to maritime law, sex with children is legal. And when you have a ship in dry dock, it's still legal. You can still abuse a child on a ship, and under maritime law, it's not a crime. So you put a ship underground, or in a port and you do that sort of thing. This is why we have, these horrific stories about these people being shipped around in shipping containers. They're on a ship. So what they do to them there is different legally to what it's done on land, even if the ship itself is on land. So that's very important to know. This was a man called John Simmons, very, very brave man, talked about his life at the Glandore Boys' home. And he said, think about your worst nightmare and then double it. He suffered that from 6 or 7 years old until he was 18, and nobody gave a stuff. He also goes on to say that there's not much being said about Glandore, but he tells us that the place is a den of pedophiles, absolute den of pedophiles. So not just one person. He's talking about half a dozen people that accessed him in that time. This information is from a government website, and it talks about 19 men who were children, obviously, at the time when this happened to them. So 19 men have alleged that they were sexually abused as children at the Glandore Boys' home. One was abused in the 50s. It goes on to when they were abused. Their ages were between 6 years and 13. It included anal and oral rape, indecent assault, gross indecency, and, most importantly here, photography of sexual acts. Now, my father was producing child rape material in the underground space, just a couple of streets away, on the same tunnel line, in the underground space underneath my childhood home, and I was subject to that also. And some of these films, you don't even want to think about how horrific they were. So this is me talking about the Mulligan inquiry and how there's a golfing term saying, you can have a mulligan and you can just wipe the slate clean. I think that's really important for people to know, and I've been spreading that around quite a bit. One of the abuses that I was subjected to as a child was a chief inspector of police at the time called Graham Bennett Fraser. Now, he is now a convicted pedophile. He was protected from any kind of prosecution when it was found out in the 80s that he was doing this abuses, and he was abusing me in the 80s as well. All he got was a demotion at the time. There was a big furor around that, and he was finally incarcerated. What frustrates me is that SAPOL will still not look into him for what he did to myself and this missing child called Louise Bell. Her first real name was Tracy. We were filmed with him. He brought Richard Kelvin in with another man to have Richard filmed with myself and Tracy Louise. He is involved in missing children. It's much, much bigger than just abusing, and obviously these poor women. I'm so sorry that they were abused as girls by this creature as well. But this is big. And this is important because he used to also live at Minleton, which is a neighbouring town to Stansbury on the Yorke Peninsula. And he also lived in North Adelaide, which is the suburb where Richard Kelvin went missing from when he went missing in 1983. This points out that one of his victims was 9 when the abuse started. I was 9 when he was abusing me, and Tracy Louise was just 10. So in that same time frame, and Richard was 14 when he went missing. This is Tracy Louise Bell. When I first went to Major Crime in 2012 to describe what had happened to her, and my father murdered her in front of me, I mentioned that her hair was different. It was much different to the photograph that was always aired of her. This is one of the typical photographs they aired of Tracy Louise when she went missing. She's at least 3 years younger than she was when she went missing in this photograph on the left. I described that when I met her under the house at Edwardstown, my childhood home, her hair was more of a flicked fringe style. It was much shorter and it was bleached on top. Within a very short period of me giving that very pivotal witness statement, they then aired on the news to refute my witness statement. This never before seen footage of her looking again like she should have, 3 years older than the photograph they always share of her in the news, with the flicked fringe style that I had described. And this doesn't show very well in the screen grab, but in the footage you can see that her hair was bleached on top from the sun. So my witness account was absolutely spot on. Now, these 2 detectives that went after this other guy to convict him for her murder, who's always said that he was innocent, rang me up on a Saturday night to say, we believe you, but we just know that this was not Louise Bell. And they spent a good 25 minutes trying to convince me that I was wrong about her identity. And then shortly after that, and I stood my ground. I knew it was her. I stood my ground, and then shortly after that, they aired this footage that they'd never aired of her before. Now, if they had that footage and they'd aired it then, they might have found her. I made phone calls to let to let the operator know that she was under my father's house, at the local phone boxes. And on the third try to try and save her, my father cut her tongue out. So I stopped. And I won't go into what happened to her after that. So it is disgusting to me that so much evidence is brought through and he can't seem to get past the firewall. But I know one of her no, two of her childhood friends now. And one of them said that when they kept airing these news pieces about her, she didn't recognize it because, number one, they didn't use a proper name. Her first real name's Tracy. And I told this to the detective in 2012, who went after this other guy, this Patsy, for her conviction against her. And he nearly fell off his chair. I said, her first name's Tracy. And he just about fell off his chair. So this friend didn't recognize her friend on the news because she didn't look like her because she was so much younger. She didn't have the same hair, and they used the wrong name for her. They used her middle name. It's just beyond frustrating. Okay, so during Tracy Louise Bell's missing time, when she was missing, and again she went missing in January of 1983, her earrings were placed under a rock at this location. I was taken to a ritual in this location when I was 14. This was by my father. This was a very significant location to my father and his cult. I believe my father put the earrings under the rock. Apparently someone with an accent rang and left a message that they were there. A man that oversaw what my father did to Louise Bell in the last moments of her life had a very thick accent. My father, I believe, put the earrings there to point out that they were equidistant, that the place where he put them, number one, it was on Doctors Road. South Road, this is South Road, where I said that the Darlington upgrade is occurring. South Road was very significant because he knew all the tunnels and bunkers were along South Road. He knew me. He knew what I was like. I was used like a recorder by him. He filled me with this information, and it's all come out in recent years where I've been able to piece all of this together. He was very, very complicated. The Doctors Road aspect related to all of the experimentation that was happening with these children. And he took a part of her, and I believe it was sent off for testing. I won't go into that. My mother made allegations around that as well, just unbelievably horrific. But he's put the earrings at a really significant location on the corner of two very significant roads with his name on one street and the name of her other abuser, Graham Bennett Fraser, on the other. And he did it for a reason. And this is also really important evidence. But of course, you know, unless you brought it out in a forum like this, no one's ever going to know about it because I keep talking about it, but police will not investigate. This is the Stansbury property where the Beaumont children are buried, and God knows how many state wards. The sinkholes in this area, it's called McIntyre Place. It's actually number 18. If you look up number 18 McIntyre Place now on Google, it misdirects you to a property down here. This is number 18. It's on a road system that it's 5 roads. So, or it's, you know, 5 different directions. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Well, anyway, it looks like a pentagram. If you drew a pentagram over that, there'd be a reason. This is part of the reason why my father was obsessed with this property. It has a large bunker under this very big shed here, a telecommunications bunker. Nothing's ever been built at the back of this property for that reason. Nothing's, you know, very little trees or anything are growing there. The number 18, according to my father, was the number of the devil. 6 + 6 + 6 to him was the number of the devil. Stansbury has the word Bury in it. Bury. He buried his victims there. And it's on, he named it McIntyre Place, or he worked hard to have it called McIntyre Place. It had 5 different names previously, or it's the 5th iteration. It's been Adelaide Road, Cutline Road, Government Road. There was another name for it as well, and now it's McIntyre Place. He wanted that in place before he left. McIntyre means son of a mason. So there are many significant factors to this particular location being of great import. And again, my father he was into riddles. He was always talking in cones and, you know, everything was a cipher. It's all very, very complicated. So that's the number 18 outside the property. Again, I mentioned that, I was told at 10, after he'd just murdered Louise Bell in front of me, Tracy Louise Bell in front of me, he told me that I'd been intentionally infected with kuru prions. Um, Now, well, he called it scrapie at the time, and he later, when the third attempt, I was told that they were kuru prions. And that's a whole nother story. But I came out with this information in 2018. It was placed into an article. I got absolutely hammered in the comments by the pedophiles and pedophile protectors who did not want this to come out. It's a very telling comment section to read, actually, because it's very obvious that they're sort of kind of put their foot in it. But I was talking about this long before all of the prions we've discovered in the spike protein with COVID and what they were putting in the jabs. So, this is all well before any of that happened. And one of the people, one of my main trolls that comments, actually calls herself fact checker in the comments, which is very, very telling, because then COVID came out and it's just fact checker, fact checker, fact checker. This is a guy called Roy Scragg. He's now dead. He was in the employ of the World Health Organization, studying kuru prions for the purposes of depopulation and demography. So the World Health Organization was involved with the kuru studies that I was a subject for. And I only know this because of an amazing researcher who's helped me to find this. I put this out, it went viral, well over 200K on Telegram with this documentation. And in one of those documents up here, it's talking about the actual kuru. Roy Scragg, who I showed you a moment ago, and his name is on this documentation, Roy Scragg. That's Roy. He's photographed here with someone called David Hamilton at the Medical Society of Papua New Guinea. So this is the Medical Society of Papua New Guinea. This is where the cadavers were sourced from for the Adelaide Medical Centre. My father knew this man, and I saw him as a child for medical checkups. This is the name of a man who was related to this man. So that's a connection to the Medical Society of Papua New Guinea that I have. I've blocked out his name because I think he's still alive. These are my admission forms. These were part of my victim of crime claim that I was paid out for last year. In my notes, to have this clearing of my urethra, because my urethra was so chronically scarred from the abuse that I suffered and the medical experimentation that I suffered as a child, the nurse was kind enough, because I told her I did not want to have this cystoscopy and dilation done at this particular doctor's rooms, because he'd already tried it on me without anesthetic and it was excruciating and I ended up screaming. But I still went back because my father had mind control over me and wanted me to go and have it done with this particular doctor. And I know why, because in 2005 I had another one of these procedures done ethically under anesthetic the proper way. And he said to me afterwards, it was a Dr. Noble, he said he'd never seen a urethra that was such a mess, and certainly not on a young woman. He'd never seen anything like it. And I still wasn't fully aware of my memories at that point. And he was asking me, what happened? What happened to you? And I just didn't want to deal with it. So having already been assaulted by this particular doctor in his rooms with no anesthetic, and when we're talking about a urethral dilation, we're talking about a rod the size of my finger, my little finger, being put in that space. That's absolutely scarred to the bilio, more than you can possibly imagine. I had urinary tract infections pretty much constantly from childhood up until I was about 18. So I went and I had to have this pre discussion with the nurse, and I told her that I wasn't going to have it done in this room because I was too scared. Right. So she put that in. And that was part of my documentation. I've mentioned all of this, and this is the end of the presentation now. And thank you to everybody who's kept watching, because it's obviously, it's pretty harrowing stuff. In the Jeffrey Epstein information, not the proper trial, we're hoping to have that information out, in detail very soon. A woman called Juliet Bryant talked about, the medical experimentation that she was used in. And that was part of what they were doing there. And it's also part of what my father was doing and what was happening in Adelaide. So I'll stop sharing now. So sorry if I was speaking too fast, but it's obviously very emotional and very hard to get it out.
Wow, that was an incredible presentation, and what a way to, provide a little bit of just insight and kind of justice to their story, that it can be told the way that it happened and not the way that it's been illustrated, and with the right names and the right locations and the right people, and not this sort of, constructed narrative that your authorities and media in your country have been really brainwashing your entire, community and country to think, and it's incredible all the evidence that you and your brother have provided, and that there still hasn't been like a full investigation into all of this, just even for them to go look at it, to just go see, if the evidence that you're giving about this property, and to just look, it's amazing that there's been so much pushback to that, right down to, downright them ignoring you completely for it, and shunning it off. So thank you for putting all of that together. I can't even imagine the pain that that's caused you, your brother, and your family, and right down to these mysterious deaths that have occurred as a result of you guys trying to just shine a light on this. It's just horrific, and you explained everything pretty good, so I don't have, you answered a lot of the questions that I had, but one thing that I was wondering, was there a specific reason why these children were targeted? Was it random, or was there something in particular of why they were seeking these children in specific?
Very, very good question. So the names. So my father was obsessed with names. So when you look at the beach where the Beaumont children were taken from, Glenelg is a palindrome. It's spelt the same way forwards as it is backwards, Glenelg. This is what Satanists are absolutely obsessed with. They can invert things. So it means the same thing back to forward. Beaumont, there's a suburb of Beaumont that was extremely important to my father. He was obsessed with it. It's a very, very affluent suburb. Um, there was also a guy called Cleland who was obsessed with Kuru and cannibalizing, who was mentioned in that Room of the Dead article that I mentioned before, and I showed some screen grabs. His name comes up there. My father was a friend of his. My father's other friend, Dr. E.B. Sims, was very close friends of Cleland, and Dr. E.B. Sims also comes up on my medical documentation for a lumbar punch that I had in 1975, which was one of the attempts to infect me with Kuru. So that was also part of my victim of crime claim. I've got so much evidence. I've got so much evidence that I can't put out there because it would just take too long. No one's going to sit here for 10 hours listening to all the evidence that I have. And I've got to also give kudos to my brother Andrew and sister Ruth, because most of the photographs from that time, from the 60s, are from them. So if you see anybody else that calls themselves an investigative journalist or anything like that that produces photographs of Anthony Munro or my father, they all came from my brother and sister. So that person or those individuals wouldn't have any of that without them. With Tracy Louise Bell, so I think the Beaumont name was being, Cleland also wrote a book called The Village of Beaumont. My father was pointing at what was going on at that time. So he used the Beaumont children as a way to point at that. With Tracy Louise Bell, my father was a line tapper. He traced calls. That's her first name. Louise, he told me it was either her or me. He had to kill me or he had to kill her. And so he told me that he was killing her in lieu of me, Lieu, as in Louise. Bell related to the telecommunications bunker. He worked for Alexander Graham Bell, invented the telephone. So the Bell name was perfect. I mean, he went at great lengths to explain how important this was to me. To him, and how significant it was to me, because I felt like I've been living on borrowed time ever since I was 10, because this poor girl suffered terribly. And Graham Bennett Fraser, his first name was Graham, Alexander Graham Bell. So, it was all interrelated. So that's just those victims. The other family victims, there's a whole, Kelvin, it's about science and cold, and my father used to have he had so many coffin-shaped freezers, those big freezers that you could fit a person in at Stansbury, that were chained shut and padlocked when I was in my late teens. It was ridiculous. You don't need that many freezers for, someone who goes out and just does a little bit of fishing. And I've been told about, a truck that was there at one time that was a refrigeration truck, and someone saw in it, and it was just blood everywhere. So there was so much going on at that property. It's ridiculous. So yeah, the names are really significant. Thank you for asking.
And any support from any members of the family? I don't know if they're all have the Bell name at this point, if there's been some marriages and stuff, but have there been members of their family at all that have supported your efforts to investigate these deaths or no?
Never
Horrible.
been contacted.
Oh my goodness. And so for people listening, is your petition still active or are there ways that people can help support your efforts with this?
Yeah, the petition is still active. You used to be able to read the comments. You can't anymore, unfortunately. But the most of the comments were, bitching about South Australian police not doing what they're supposed to do. It was pretty much a litany of that. So I don't know if that's why the comments were removed, but there were thousands and thousands and thousands of comments like that. Yeah. You can't search it up. You'd have to go to my YouTube channel, Rachel Vaughan, and find it in my links at the top on my channel because it's not searchable.
Okay, so
Pretty
maybe what
impressive.
I'll
It's still
do,
got that many.
oh my gosh. Maybe what I'll do then is take that link from your channel and I'll put it in the show notes so people have like a direct link for it.
Yeah.
And then where can people connect with you? Your Telegram channel, you did mention that. I want you to at least be able to share a little bit about that and then where you're posting your videos and where people can connect with you and reach out to you.
So all under my name. So I'm on Twitter. My handle on Twitter is Weasel 8888. But otherwise it's on my name. I'm on BitChute, Rumble, YouTube, um, Telegram, LinkedIn, Insta, Facebook. Yeah.
And then again, your website is sixthscience.com, and that's the number six. And we talked about in the beginning, just a little refresher that she does have a couple workshops coming up. So I do encourage you guys to please go connect with her and support her. If you have friends that would be interested in that, which a lot more people are waking up to a lot of this, please refer them to Rachel, share her content, share her channels, go hang out with her in Telegram. That's probably where you're most active, right? In Telegram. So
It is.
that's a really easy way too that people can connect directly with you. And Rachel, just thank you. You are just such a bright light in this dark world. I'm so proud of the work that you're doing. It's revolutionary. It's very needed. It's empowering. And it's going to be more and more meaningful as more and more people wake up to all of this, and it sparks and ignites them to want to reclaim the gifts that they've either shut off or had exploited or just didn't know about, and it's really important that you're educating people the way that this information should be distributed throughout the world and in a way with integrity, just like how you yourself conduct everything that you do. And I just want to thank you for your relentless work in supporting SRA survivors, mind control survivors, whistleblowers, and of course these three incredible children that have had their story completely distorted and twisted, and not told the way that it should be. So thank you for all the work that you do, and thank you for just being you. You're an amazing human and you're one of my personal heroes. And it's an honor to have you on and to get to share this information with everybody.
Darling, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
And for everybody listening, again, I'll have all Rachel's links in the show notes. I'll have all my links as well. Connect with us wherever you can. Some of these platforms aren't very privy to the information that we share, so it's easy to get kicked off, or if you're only following us on YouTube, that might not be the most stable place that you guys can connect with us. So I always encourage everybody to go support wherever you can. Share. It's a really easy way to support survivors. A lot of you ask, what can I do to help? Go share Rachel's Telegram page, go join it, go share the podcast episodes that she does, share her website and her workshop, join her workshop and learn from her. There's a lot of different ways that we can support that are free and or affordable. And I really encourage you guys to do that. So you guys, thank you so much for listening. Bless you all, and we will see you next time.